I do not see any hands raised, so I will go ahead and I'll start talking through the styles chapter. So the styles chapter, I'm going to assume it's going to be a little bit easier than what we had with the multiple dialogues chapter. There's still a bit of content to cover, but it's a lot of little pieces, but they work pretty easily together. So at the end of this module, we're going to be able to use what we call presentation styles. And when you look in the documentation, you're going to be looking under presentation styles, and it's how you affect the presentation of the objects. We're going to add special effects to an object depending upon its current state and depending upon its position. We're going to spend a few slides going through and rendering a table container as a picture flow. A picture flow is when you get to flip through images like you were taking your finger and flip through them. I believe I used to do this in some music software. You may still be able to, I'm not sure, but that's the concept of a picture flow. We're going to look at a TextEdit widget, and we're going to look how you add integrated search, how you add spell checking, how you add rich text. So one of the things that people have been asking us for was to have a more complex TextEdit widget that allows us to do a lot of formatting, that has the bold, italics, etc. We'll show you how to get that done. We're going to show you how to do styles to buttons and labels and TextEdit widgets that says enable HTML syntax recognition, and really what this means is to be able to make a link so that you can link out to something, you can click a button to send mail, all using HTML tags. We'll configure an image container to host an embedded browser, and I'm not sure why this is at the bottom of the list, but we're going to apply a style to a window. Oh, the status bar. We're going to apply a style to a window to change the appearance of the status bar. So that's what we'll have completed by the end of this chapter. So first, presentation styles. Presentation styles were designed to centralize the attributes related to the appearance of user interface elements. And the keyword that we're reading here is centralize again. We want to, just like we did with the action defaults file, with the 4AD file, we wanted to do that with the presentation styles. You want to have one person or one team who is in charge of the presentation styles, the look of your application, the look of the buttons, the looks of the tables, and they manage it all through one 4ST file, and this is typically, and then you use that one 4ST file to distribute it to all of your developers so that you end up with the same appearance. Elements that in the AUI tree that reference a style attribute are going to get the attribute as it's defined in that 4ST file. Oh, I'm sorry. Elements in the AUI that reference a style attribute will get the attribute defined. If they don't explicitly reference a style, they're going to use a global default that's found in fgldir/lib.default.4st. And you're going to be able to create your own style file, and we'll take you through the steps to do that, to create and apply your own style file. There's a note at the very bottom of your text in page 3 that says, this is all for the GUI front ends. If you're using a TUI mode or a text mode, you have TTY attributes, but we're not talking about those here. So we're only talking about your GUI front ends here. Okay, this is just showing you that styles applied to objects. So here we have a form, and the form has two tables, and each table has a different style applied. So it's just showing that you can do that. And here we have a window, and this window has a style applied to not include the menu panel, not include that action panel. Chances are there's a menu panel option that's been set to none, and so that this window style has been defined not to include the menu panel, and each table has had its own style applied. Just a quick little graphic to show you that it is possible, and of course we're going to see that live. So what is this presentation styles file? A presentation styles file is an XML file, and it's made up of style nodes and style attribute elements, style elements and style attribute elements. So I'm going to actually open up a real one. Here's an example we have on the slide, but let me go ahead and open up a real one. I'm going to go into my file browser. I'm going to go and look at the default.4 ST. So inside of 4Js, inside of Studio 250, I had my FGL, and then it was inside of lib, I believe. And I should have the default.4st. So here is the default style file that we provide that is going to be the fallback. And as you can see, it's mainly talking about Windows. So I have my Windows style, and then I have window.main, window.main2, window.dialog, window.dialog2, and I'll have a window.naked. I have a window.viewer. So these are different ways that we can make a window appear. If you look through these, you can kind of guess what some of these attributes are going to do. So, my window type, it's going to be a modal window. Is this window going to be sizable? Chances are my values are going to be yes or no. Where do I want this window positioned? Where do I want the action panel? Do I want it at the bottom? Do I want not to have an action panel? Here's that action panel equal to none. If I have a ring menu, where do I want that position? So you can see every time you want to add a specific attribute, you're going to go and you're going to not do it in this file because this is the file that we will overwrite if you do an upgrade or if you do a reinstall. But let's say I'd created my own copy. I can just go and I can make a copy of this style attribute. I would then identify what the name of the attribute is. I'm just going to type name for now, and I would type in the value. And I would repeat this for every attribute that I wanted to add. I'm not going to save my changes here. No, because I don't modify that default file. The next thing I wanted to show you is just, where do you find out all this information about presentation styles? Where do I find out what all the attributes are that I could possibly apply to any specific element? I go into the BDL guide. I go into User Interface. And down here, I'm going to have a section called Presentation Styles. And inside of Presentation Styles, we have a style attribute reference. And as I can see by looking at this right here, looking at the references, we have some that are common across everyone. So you can change background color. You can change font family. What else? Image cache, text color. So these are things that are pretty general across most objects that are on a form. Then I have things that are specific to a window. My action panel button size, action panel position. And you can see there's a lot of elements out here, or a lot of different attributes that I can associate to a window. I'll get into some other ones where there aren't as many. Button has 2. What type of button do I want to do? How do I want the icon to be scaled? And so for each object out there that I want to do, I would go through and I would look and I'd say, okay, what are the attributes that I can affect? And then what are the values that I can set for that attribute? So for example, a label, basically, do I want it to be interpreted as plain, or do I want it to be interpreted as HTML? Those are ways that I can affect a label. And where would I do all of these? I would go and I would create my own version of that style file. And I could go in and then apply a standard to say, okay, for all buttons, I want these styles to be applied. So yeah, this was just showing, just the purpose of this slide was to make you aware of the fact that it is XML. You only have one style list at the top, and then for each style, you're going to give it a name. And the name can either be a general name, and you can get more specific with the name as it goes through. So it's a window object, but it's a window.dialog, a window.naked, and then you just list as many style attributes as you want to list. You can see some have very few and some have more. So styles can be defined at several levels. If you just have an asterisk, that means it's global. It's going to be applied automatically to all elements. You can define a style according to element type, and that would be applied automatically to any element that is of that type. So for all windows or all edits or all combo boxes. If you use the .AnyName, that's where you're saying you're going to apply it to any element type that has that specific name set to its style attribute. We'll see examples of this. You can also have element type.AnyName. We saw that with window.dialog, window.naked, and that's where you would say it's only applied to elements of the given type that have that specific style assigned to it. Let's take a look at some of this. So here's that window style list again. So on this window style list, my first one is saying the style name is equal to window, and this is saying I want this to be applied globally, or I want it to be applied to any window element. I then have a style window.required. This says, okay, but if that window has a style attribute named required, then I want this to take precedence, and instead of it being a normal window, it's going to be a modal window. I want this to take precedence. Instead of it being sizable yes, it's going to be sizable no. And the action panel is going to be turned off. But that's only if the window has been named as a required window. So the style has been set to required for that window. This one, the style name equal to label, means it's going to be applied to all labels. This one, the style name being a TextEdit .int search, means that it's going to be applied only to TextEdit fields who have a style applied to it, a name style applied to it of int search. And this last one has just .urgent, so that means anything, whether it's a TextEdit, whether it's a label, whether it's a window, if it has the style urgent applied to it, it's going to get this background color and it's going to get this font size. And naturally, we're going to go through the most specific. Okay, Mark asked me this question, and it's good. It's what I was going to say now. So, if let's say we had if we had a style window.urgent and we also had a style of .urgent, will they both be applied? One of them is going to take precedence, and that precedence is going to be the one that's window.urgent if I'm in a window. And then the answer was, are they cumulative? I'm going to have to test out the cumulative nature of it. I know that if they both have the same thing defined, the window.urgent is going to take over. I want to say that they're not going to be cumulative, but I'm going to test that out, and I'll get back to you. I'm going to check cumulative. I'll get back to you on that tomorrow, or we can test it out in the lab today. Cumulative. The styles tend to be more cumulative than action defaults were, so my gut is going to say that they are going to be cumulative, but I am going to have to check that out. I'm going to have to verify. Check cumulative nature. Let me write some notes to myself. So I'll check that out, and I will answer that first thing tomorrow morning. We also have these things called pseudo selectors, and pseudo selectors are to handle the state of an object. So does the object have focus? Does the object is it in a query mode? Is it in display mode or in display array? Is the row even or odd? Is the object inactive or active? We only want it to apply to text in a message or in an error. We only want it to be applied to text in the table aggregate fields. These are what we call pseudo selectors because you say it depends upon how that object is being used. And you use this with a colon. So in our pseudo selector examples, I want to apply a certain style to edit fields that have the focus. The edit field that has the focus, I would do edit : focus. And as we move into that field, then this style is going to be applied, and in here an example, they're going to throw a background image on that field. Under the next one, we have how do we want our odd table rows to look, so that we give them a background color of light blue. How do I want my even table rows to be look? There I give the background color of light gray. And then my style name dash down star dot active. If a field is active, I want that background color to be white. So it's not even, if anything is active, I want that background color to be white. So this is where the pseudo selector, it's really talking about the state that they're in, or the position that they're in. Is it an odd or even row? Does it have the focus? Is it the active field? Well, it is actually just a pen. Okay, I was hoping to add some text to this. I'm surprised that I can't. But the other thing I wanted to point out here is you could line up pseudo selectors as well. So if I wanted it to be, if I wanted to have something special for a table that was an even row and also had the focus, I could say table colon even colon focus, and that would give me the ability to even go to that level of detail. So you can line up multiple pseudo selectors by just putting a colon between each pseudo selector and design a style for that pseudo selector. Okay, in the default.forest file, we give you we give you a series of window styles, and these are the window styles that we found most people want to use. So when you open a window, when you say open window W with form F1, by default we're using the default window style. You can override it. You can add an attributes, and then you can put in parentheses style equals, and then you can list any of these window styles. And these are ones that we have predefined for you that we find most people tend to use. So we give you two mains. One is the starts an application window. Main is ideal to display a start menu. So you'll use that tomorrow when we talk about start menus. If we do a main 2, it's the one that just starts up, but it has no menu and no action buttons. If you do a dialog, it's okay for a typical modal dialog with your OK and cancel buttons. But we give you 3 other different options for modal windows. It's whether they're sizable or not sizable, whether they have menus or not, whether they have action buttons or not, and where that action buttons are located. We give you a naked window where there's just a window with no menu and no action buttons. And we give you a viewer, which is no menu, no action buttons, and only the cross button or the cancel button in the upper right corner. So you can go through, you could read through our oh, I've already closed it. Let me see, reopen documents. You can go through and you can look through and see what all of these different R's and read up on each of these attributes, figure out what it is that the attribute being applied does to it. Another way to kind of experiment with these is just spend a half an hour creating and opening your window, applying the different styles as you go along, and see how that affects the window as it's brought up. So the different ways you can set the style attribute of an element. You can set it using an attributes clause. So I talked about the open window, and we're going to show you an example of that next. You can add it as a form element attribute in the form specification file, and we'll show you how you set that using a property. You can also set it using the DOM API, or you can use a built-in class method. So you can do that to change a style dynamically. If you want to change what the style on a button is based upon what's happening in the program, you can set it up to do it dynamically. And we're going to cover that more tomorrow when we talk about dynamically changing the user interface. But let's go back to what we're going to be able to do today. So the first one was applying a presentation style in the BDL. So the one that you all will get used to and we will be doing today is where we just add a style clause to, or a style attribute using the attribute phrase. So here I'm opening my window W1 with my form, and then I want the style to be set to required. So this is one way we get to do it. You can do it in the form file itself. So here we give two different examples. If I'm in a per file, when I'm defining my attributes for my fields, I just can add a style equal to urgent. I can add my style definition there. If I'm in Form Designer, one of the properties when I've selected my item, so here I'm on a table, one of my properties is style, and that's where I can go and I can set the value for that style. So here's two of the three ways. You can set it in your BDL code. You can set it in your form definition file, whether you use the per file or whether you use Form Designer. The third way, again, you can set it using object methods. You can set it using set it using methods inside of your code, but we're going to cover that tomorrow. So one style example, and there's a few slides on this. I think this was just a neat thing when it came out, or they were very happy that they made this. So we have you put out a PictureFlow as well. Let me close out my application. I'm going to show you what they're talking about first. And hopefully I haven't done anything lately to mess it up. Okay, so here's one that you're going to be building inside of your, let's see, erase, cell drawing, that you're going to be building inside of one of your labs. And it's a PictureFlow, that basically allows me to scroll through pictures in an application. So this is, people are used to doing this and seeing this with, I've seen it on some music sites. As I scroll through my music library, it shows me the album covers. And what this is underneath is it's just a table. And it's a table that uses a style, and that style is called the PictureFlow style, and it's a style that's been designed to allow me to do exactly what I'm doing right now. So let's go through how we got this to happen. So we started by creating a program array, and the program array just has it's a single column, and the field has the image path that points to an image. And we load that table up and we present it using a display array instruction. The only thing that's unique is this table container has a style applied, and the style is called a PictureFlow style. So inside of my style, I've created a style. The name, it's a table.PictureFlow. So any table that has PictureFlow, I wanted to apply this style attribute that's called table type, and it's set to a value of PictureFlow. So inside of my standard display array that I was talking about, I have a table out there called product. It's selecting prod pick. The prod pick has basically what you see up here. It has some paths to images. I load my array. So it's loading the array, and then it's displaying the array. Put on my spotlight. It's displaying the array to my record. So this record out there, the record is related to a table, and it's just displaying the array to the record. The reason that this display array is, okay, well actually no, that's step one. Step two is we also have to have an FGL image path. This FGL image path is showing me the root path that this path gets added onto. So I have my root path is going to this images/database inside of my samples. Here's a samples directory. And then if I added on /art/ammonite fossil, it would pull up that first image. But right now my display array, without having the PictureFlow assigned to it, it would just be a table listing all of these fields. But what I then did is I went through and said, okay, no, for this table, oops, sorry, let me go back one. For this table, I wanted to set my product.prodpic to be a form field image, and I wanted to set up my table to have a style of PictureFlow. And in doing these two things, it turned that table, and it used a style to change it from just a simple table and put it instead into a table that uses the PictureFlow style. Let me see if I can change this. Live demos are always fun. Let me just see if I can change this and get it to revert back to how it would have normally been. So if I change this from if I convert this widget back to an edit field. Sure, edit field. And then I'm going to go into my table, and I'm going to change the style. Let me find my style. From PictureFlow, I'm going to get rid of my style. Let me save my changes. Let me compile this form. Success. Let me execute. Fingers crossed because I'm doing this live. Good. And it's I took the style out. So this is the table without that style. I have just basically a list of paths that are going off that don't do anything because they're just a list of paths. So instead, we have you go in, we have you make the widget a form field image widget. We have you go on the style, and I'm going to, whoops, let me, PictureFlow, and that's how I went. I'm kind of concerned that I didn't find that style there, so let me, yeah, and so my PictureFlow style is not being, it was not found, so I don't know where I would have to go through and make sure I'm pointing to my right, to the right default file. I need to add in here a style that had my PictureFlow that had this code right here in it. So that's one of the funs of live demos, is going back. So I would add that to my style here, but I wouldn't add it to the default. I'd want to add it to my default.forest here. So table of PictureFlow. So my question is, why is this guy not finding that library there? There we go. Apply, OK. Let me open this again. Let me reopen this up. No styles. I'm not sure why it's not finding that. So anyway, I will. So I pointed it to the right thing. Nope. I'm going to have to debug that later to figure out why I'm not finding what I think I should be finding. Okay. Okay, let me just go ahead and talk about a couple other things. So one of the things people have asked us to do is to have a more robust text edit. There are styles that we've created out there to do this. I'm just showing you the code up here. We don't actually have this in a lab, but it would be a very easy thing for you to create your own little sample file and test it out. So one of the things we've done is we've created an integrated search. The integrated search provides a search as you see here. So it's a little search button box at the bottom. You can scroll through previous and next to see, any other occurrences of what you've typed in here. And the way we would have done that is we've created something here. We've created a style called int_search, and then when we define this field, we would assign the style of insert to this text edit field. On this next one, there's an integrated spell check. So there's a style attribute out there called spell check. If you spell check, you need to tell it what dictionaries to use. Because you could have a French form, you could have an English form. You would need to tell it what language to use. You have to get these dictionary files, and you have to download them and place them where you need them. And these files, we have an address up here where you can download these dictionary files too. We also have some notes underneath on page 17 that says we support the files for Office or OpenOffice.org 2.x, not for OpenOffice.org 3.x. I'd actually go and verify that inside of our documentation simply because it's been a year or two since that note was written in this manual. But but you're responsible for getting the dictionaries and placing the dictionaries where your application can find them. Here's one where people wanted the fancy editor. They wanted to be able to do the bold, insert, underline, etc. across your fancy editor. And the way we do this is you needed to add two things. We needed to switch the text format to HTML, and we said show edit toolbox equal to yes. So you could have an HTML box that doesn't show the edit toolbox, but if you want to have this edit toolbox, that means you are putting HTML in here, and that means that you need to have this text format equal to HTML as well. Then you would create something such as HTML toolbox as a style to use. And what if I wanted to have a form that had both the HTML toolbox and the integrated search and the spell check? You can do that. You can list more than one style to be applied to a field. So here I have a TextEdit field that has the HTML toolbox applied and it has the integrated search applied. In Form Designer, I can do the same thing, HTML toolbox and integrated search. They're separated by a space. So here, separated by a space, separated by a space. When you get into style selection, I'm going to figure out why I'm having issues with it, because it should be able to go and easily find, when you click on that little ellipse button, it should be bringing up your style box and allow you to select using check marks which ones you ultimately end up wanting to have in that box. So the next slide is talking about hyperlinks as widgets, and the slide up here is showing you three different ways that we've, or four ways actually, that we've added hyperlinks here. We have a contact us and we have a visit us. This contact us is a link that was put on a label, so it's an HTML label, HTML-based label, and this link is going to use a mail to tag to trigger it. So if I click on this, underneath this, the HTML is something like an href equal to mail to and then an address. So that's providing it using HTML. The web address, also href going off to a web address. On this example right here, this is a button actually that's being displayed as a link. So you've gone and they've created a style for a button that turns that button into a link and displays it like this. And up here in our TextEdit, we have another link that's been put out here, and that's because this TextEdit has been enabled to do HTML support. So these are ways that we put hyperlinks out here. In the next slide, we show you some of the code that's allowed us to make that happen. So we have a button style that has been created. That button style has been given a further clarification of .link. So if I put a button on the form, I set that button style equal to link, then it's going to come in and the button type it's going to use is going to be a link instead of using a typical button display. Here I have my label. I want my label to be a URL, and that's saying to treat that label, the text format as HTML. But here's my text edit field. If I wanted to say it to be an HTML-based one, I set that text format equal to HTML. So here are just some examples of how we set up the form to have styles, or to how we set up some styles to allow a form to display things as links instead of how they're normally displayed. On the next slide, they show how we've been able to go out there and make an integrated browser into a form. So we've defined an image field on this form. This image field has a style applied to it called browser, and inside of my definition, I've added a style. The name is image.browser. The style attribute is image container type, and the value is equal to browser. And this is telling us that this image widget should host an embedded browser. And inside of my code, I would feed it in the URL that I wanted it to display. There is a little caveat that we have in the text here that this browser, it's a simple browser. It's using WebKit open source project as provided by Qt. It does have limitations. There's no Java or ActiveX support. So it gives you some functionality, but it will display HTML, it will display rich text, but it could probably encounter some difficulties if you went into a more complex web page. The last style we're going to talk about in this chapter is just about a status bar type. One thing people like to do is control how the messages and how the errors and how the comments are displayed. You can see that we've given you a slew of options. So do you want to have one panel? Do you want to have two panels? Do you want to have one line? Do you want to have two lines? Do you want to have three lines? How do you want your error messages to display along wherever they sit? So here's what an example. This one is using SB panels 4. So if we look at SB panel 4, if I go back, panel 4 has two panels. The first one's displaying the message. The second one would be displaying the error. So I can go back, I can go to look. I can see I have two panels, one next to each other. First one displaying the message, the second one displaying the error. And it's being applied to this window because I said I want this window to be .sb panels 4. And when I open my window, I gave it a style of SB's panels 4. Okay, that's the discussion I had today for presentation styles. I want to see if you have any questions first about the presentation styles. I will get back. I had the one question that was out there that asked about making sure that styles are cumulative. If we know that the more specific will win if there's two attributes defined the same, but what happens if I have a window.urgent and I have a window and the window includes an attribute that's not listed in window.urgent? Is it cumulatively applied? Is that applied? And I'm going to answer that tomorrow morning. I want to quickly talk you through what you're going to be doing with your lab today. So the lab, there's the first exercise. You're going to organize a project. And like you saw with me, you're going to end up with a day 2 node. And in this node, the main thing that you're going to do for this entire first lab is you're going to be creating an application that doesn't do multiple row select but allows multiple dialogues. So if I was to show you that, it was up here, my M dialogues. Let me execute this specific one. And you're going to be implementing this where you can go and you have multiple dialogues and you can work in the multiple dialogues without having to leave one or leaving the other. So that's the goal of our first lab. In our second lab, we're going to allow you to do multiple row selection. So they actually have you go and they have you, I think, copy M dialogues to create M dialogues /MRS, and then they have you go and modify M dialogues /MRS to have it to where you can enable multi-row select. You can select multiple rows. And something you should be noticing with my colors behind my buttons and my colors behind my rows, you're going to end up ultimately applying styles to these to have the row colors be different, to have background images appear up here. I believe that's what we do. So that's a lot of the second lab there. And then our third lab, you do some styles on the MRS application, and that's going to be setting these styles. And then the last lab you're going to do is you're going to do the PictureFlow lab, so you get a chance to go out there and create your PictureFlow application. And again, I'm going to figure out why I'm not finding my default .4st. because that should be, when it's looking for a 4ST file, it should be looking in your local directory first, if you have that name default.4st, and then it should be looking beyond that to your other directory. So I'm going to figure out why my form is having issues finding my default.4st. Make sure I didn't accidentally overwrite it or something like that. Okay, are there any questions? Thank you, good luck, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.